Dragon Ballers, if you're looking to buy Dragon Ball Super or One Piece sealed product, make sure to get 5% off using my link to Mystic TCG down in the description. You can also sell cards to them using their Facebook link, which is also down in the description. Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. We have more events to go over for the Set 20 Power Absorb format. The first one is going to be the Core TCG Online Regional event, and then we also have the Zenkai Showdown, which is a pretty cool one because it was actually an independently hosted tournament in Europe. Shout out to Lookout for hosting a tournament like that, which is super awesome. I love seeing independent tournaments that just run for this game, and also shout out to him for supplying me with the info from his event. Obviously, his link will be down in the description. We'll get into all that in today's video. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, and let's just jump right on in. Starting with the Core TCG Webcam Regional. This was 192 players, best of one pre-side like usual. No top cut playoff in these types of events. I do have the deck list down in the description, courtesy of Eggman. Now, we're seeing a lot of what we're used to seeing in terms of region splits. And what I mean by that is there's just so much blue in North America, where a lot of other regions, namely Europe, they play a lot more red. But I will say, red does have a very fair showing here. We have, of course, 3 Red Sin, 2 SS4 Gogeta. These two decks, a lot of people are just honestly tired of seeing, myself included. It's been like 4 formats. These are the top red decks. Don't expect that to change, obviously, but I do think these are the decks that you have to be able to beat in this format as far as the fastest decks go. But there is a good concentration of blue, so these blue players have obviously figured out a way to beat the red decks in some cases. But I think there's just a lot more blue representation in North America than there is just red and probably most other colors, and we see that with 3 Gamma and 3 Android 21, the 2 most highly repped blue decks, and the next most highly repped deck being the 3 Red Sin. And then we have a bunch of singletons that are actually more interesting than not. So we have 1 blue-green Android 16, which was not piloted by Jerry Lopez. Jerry Lopez actually played Gamma this time around, so that is interesting in and of itself. We have 1 Soul Striker, my teammate Marcus making back-to-back top 16s with the Soul Striker leader. We'll take a look at his list in this video. We have 1 Trunks Vegeta, we have 1 Golden Frieza, our pretty much expected yellow representatives, and 1 Expert 21. I believe that makes this the 3rd or 4th event that Expert 21 has top 16 in a row. I'm getting pretty ready to call this a meta deck, to be honest. Like, I don't know, maybe meta is not the right word. Maybe it's just rogue because it's not as highly concentrated as obviously Gamma, Sin, or Gogeta or 21. So maybe it's like on that rogue meta, like tier 1.5 border, but the deck is really strong. I've been testing against it a lot more lately, and it's a really good deck. But anyways, let's take a look at the breakdown for the Zenkai Showdown. We have the top 16 here. This was a 50-player tournament. For an independent tournament in Europe, definitely not a bad size with top 16 here. We have first place Majin Vegeta, and a pretty decent concentration of Majin Vegeta at that. And we're going to see some really interesting data in a second as to what decks were most repped in the room in general. But to see this much Majin Vegeta is definitely super interesting, because I think before we'd expect to see this, we would totally expect to see Golden Frieza and Trunks Vegeta. That yellow triangle, I do think those are the best 3 yellow decks. Trunks Vegeta and Golden Frieza definitely fighting for what you could call the best yellow deck. I do think Majin Vegeta sits underneath those two just a little bit because it's a bit more aggressive than either of the 2 decks, but that's maybe not totally an upside. Like, it is a really good thing going for Majin Vegeta that it's more aggressive than Golden and Trunks Vegeta, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't necessarily have that same ability to control the game that Golden and Trunks Vegeta have, just based on the complete merit of their main deck cards. A lot of what Majin Vegeta has in his main board, it wants you to be aggressive, which again, in some matchups is definitely a good thing. I do like the fact that you have cards like Cooler, Counter, and T-Blow backed up by some really solid 1-cost threats. That is really good, but I think in the yellow mirrors, it can be a little bit rough. And that's from my experience playing the deck a lot myself, too. Of course, we do have our red SS4 Gogeta, and only 1 Sin from the looks of things. A red Broly swap, though, definitely super interesting. Lots of Gamma, just like we would expect. And then a couple more singletons. So we actually have 1 Cumber, which Black has not been doing so hot in this format. Like, Cumber's been here and there, Spring Kai Time's been here and there, but not, any sort of mainstay at all. We have one Beerus, which we also haven't seen too much ever since the hit to Boo Unison. We also have one green World Tournament Roshi leader, which we've actually seen before in Europe, which is funny enough. And then we have a yellow Sin Shenron. Not a deck that I would expect to see in quite some time. I do wonder what synergies it has with the new 4-cost Sin Shenron Champ Pack promo. I don't remember if the 1-drop can play that one. I almost think it can only play a 19k from the deck. But still, that being a Shadow Dragon, meaning you can use it for various different effects and restand at the end of the turn for, you know, being able to attack with it, then block with it, then use its ability to negate an attack, and then, or negate an effect rather, and then restand it again. Pretty solid. So yeah, definitely some really cool unexpected outliers. Now for the data for all the leaders in this 50-player room, Majin Vegeta being the most highly repped is definitely super unexpected. Again, being a European tournament, I totally would have expected either Gogeta or Sin to be the highly most repped leader in the room, but it goes to Majin Vegeta in this case, which is super interesting. All right, time to look at some deck lists. We have all 16 of the topping deck lists here on Eggman's channel. This is going to be in the description down below. Now, I don't know about you guys, I really don't care to look at any Gamma, Sin, or Gogeta lists, so I figured I'd pick some of the more interesting ones. So firstly, we have my teammate Marcus's deck profile here, and I know that I profiled his build last week, but it's actually a very different build. What Marcus decided to do here was actually take a page out of his older playbook and play an aggro version of Soul Striker, which, if you guys happen to remember, when he first played Crimson at an event, he got second place at a California regional playing an aggressive version of Crimson. He basically took that shell and put it into Soul Striker here. So we've got 3 copies of the SS3 Gogeta Super Warrior Evolution Unison. This is the aggro unison for the deck. Now, if Soul Striker wasn't errata, this would be even better because it would be your aggro and awakening play. Obviously, that's not a thing anymore, but it still is a 20k dual attack unison that has other cool synergies as well. One of the really funny plays that we actually thought about as a team, like this is almost, what, 2 years ago, is the ability to use the -1 here, play a blue sand with a cost 2 or less with the skills negated for the turn, play your super combo, which you're thinking, why would I ever want to play my super combo? But it plays it with the skills negated, so you can bounce it back to your hand for a Janemba Bewitching Blow. Get your super combo right back to your hand. You're able to use it as soon as you want. You just played a free 19k dual attacker. This card's limited to 1 for a reason. And it's a pretty cool play. Obviously, you got to make sure that there's nothing that can go wrong with your super combo. So you wouldn't want to do this against like red with Yamcha counterplay, for example, or green with Charismatic Villain would be a better example. You want to make sure you don't do things like that. But that is a pretty neat play. And then, of course, we have other staple-ish stuff like SS Bardock Spirit Resonance just for getting extra strings with your leader. Staple-ish in terms of, like, this is a card he played a lot of copies of in his old Crimson build. And then we have the Piccolo the Infiltrator, which is honestly one of the best new cards you could ever hope to have in a deck like this that wants to be an aggressive blue deck. We have 1 copy of Gotenks Return of the Reaper of Justice. It's a super cheesy one of. Basically, if you have the Gogeta Unison in play, you just play this from your hand in rest mode to activate battle speed. And the Unison says, if your leader's a blue sand, you have a blue sand in rest mode, your leader doesn't take damage from attacks. If your opponent's going all in like a triple strike, you can just cheese in the activate battle of Gotenks and just not take triple strike and possibly win the game if they all end, which is super funny. Here we have our Z deck and our side deck. Now, super cheesy stuff Marcus was doing, playing 1 copy of Rebirth of Justice and 1 copy of Android 21 Bad Omen. I honestly cannot tell you what specific matchup this was for, but basically for 4 energy, you can burn your opponent of their last life. And I know that it was a goal of his to try to pull that off as many times as he could. So I'm not sure why it wasn't in his main board, but here's his list if you want to try it out. Let's go ahead and take a look at the highest placing Android 21 list. I know Android 21 is also just relatively popular in the format right now, but it is a newer deck. And I think there are actually a lot of different ways to build it. So that's why I think it's always interesting to take a look at some of the higher placing 21 lists. Now, what's funny too is we come off a week of 21 getting 1st and 2nd in North America, and now it only cracks like, you know, barely top 16 essentially. But we of course have our 1 Boo Unison. We have a bunch of standard stuff going through until we get to our Android 8 super combos. So very different Android lineup for super combos here, because some people play Zeno super combo, some people play Vegeta super combo, some people play Bionic Blitz. This is the first high placing list, and I haven't looked at all the high placing lists. I might have missed it, but this is the first high placing list that I've seen play this specific split, let alone 3 copies of Android 8 Kind-Hearted Machine. Now, it is draw 1 super combo, which is kind of rough compared to Vegeta, where you're tucking 1 to draw 2, but it is searchable through your various searching effects of the deck, which is kind of neat. And we do have 1 copy of Android 1718 Team Up Attack. This untaps a blue-green when you combo it during your opponent's turn. This card is very comparable to Zeno Super Combo. The only thing I don't love about it is I think Zeno gives you more flexibility, meaning you can charge a card or maybe even ramp a card you didn't want to ramp and then pick it up. Like, let's say you happen to accidentally ramp, or not accidentally, but unfortunately ramp your secret rare. Well, now it's in your energy for sure. Like, it's just stuck there. Zeno can get it out of there, which is definitely kind of nice. This, again, though, has the upside of definitely being searchable. We have Kusu, which I've been playing with more and more. I think this card is actually so good. I personally think 4 is actually a lot, though, because sometimes it's hard to combo with all these 1-cost 10Ks. When you play a bunch of Kusus, you happen to draw a bunch of them early. It's kind of rough. I like 3 personally, but I mean, it's just a opinion of mine. And then we have 2 copies of the Raditz Unison, which I also very much like this Unison. I think it's just the next best blue defensive Unison that you want to play on turn 3 next to the one of Boo. I like that quite a bit. We go down to the Z deck. I very much like the 4 of Android 21 Wavering Will. I still think this card is specifically good in blue mirrors, not really against much else. But if your opponent goes to play Piccolo the Infiltrator, for example, in window 2, you can counterplay with this, tap it down immediately. That's a really strong play for sure. And then we have the highest placing Golden Frieza list. Yet another deck that is doing very well this format, but I think is buildable in a lot of different ways. So I wanted to go ahead and take a look at it. We have our 4 copies of Higher Dragon. We have our 3 copies of SS2 Gohan Unison. Yeah, this is the main pressure engine of the deck. I think you can go back and forth between 3 copies and 4 copies of SS2 Gohan. This is a card that you can potentially cast 2 to 3 times in one turn in this deck, which makes me want to play 4, but I totally understand wanting to play 3, because in a deck like this, you do have to play a high number of cards you can't readily combo with. So yeah, wanting to play 3 there makes a ton of sense. 3 Time Magic, definitely just super solid negate. We have 1 Bloodlust. We have 3 copies of SS3 Goku Universe at Stake. Now, if I remember this from the stream, this was the list playing Hercule Rallying Hope, which is basically a 1-cost barrier Z battle card that automatically turns on your Universe at Stake. So instead of this being a 2-cost play, like purely a 2-cost play, it's essentially going to be a 3-cost play, because you got to play the Z battle card from the deck at least a turn you want to play this if you don't have a Z battle card prior. That's why I like this card mostly in decks with Z leaders, because once you play that Z leader, now the rest of the game your Universe at Stake's a 2-cost, especially Majin Vegeta. This is only going to be a 2-cost because your Z leader is absolutely free. But the card's still very powerful. I don't blame anyone for just trying to find a way to fit it in their deck. I definitely do not blame anyone for that. And then going through the rest here, pretty standard until we get to 3 copies of SS Goku Final Sacrifice. Definitely a really good card against red. It's super funny. This card was actually best against red, but also really bad against red at the same time, because if this thing got Yamcha counterplayed, you actually would not be able to resolve the effect, because part of the cost is placing it in the drop. Now that Yamcha's at 1, this is a much more reliable card against red, so I actually do like the tech here quite a bit. And now let's go down to the sideboard. The one of Clan of Terror, super cute tech. You can do a lot of cool stuff with this, playing it off Mecha Freezer, Robotic Riposte. A lot of times taking your opponent's SCR. That was really good when your opponent would play Baby Hatch. Maybe not so good now that all the SCRs have on-play effects, but always hitting a super combo out of their hand, definitely solid. And then the 9-cost Sin Shenron, really good card against red, because they typically have to use several cards to minus it up to get it off the board. And against SS4 Gogeta, you can actually negate the skills of the guys that draw when comboed, so you're just actually limiting their draw power just by having this guy out on the board. And if he was to die, you would just draw 2 cards, which is really strong. So yeah, that goes over everything I wanted to go over in today's video, guys. Couple cool deck lists. Again, all the deck lists will be down in the description. Let me know if you guys liked the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.